The Philippines' natural attributes and location in the Pacific Ring of Fire and in the typhoon belt of the western North Pacific Basin make her prone to tropical cyclones, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and other natural hazards. Through the years, the country has experienced many losses from the impact of natural hazards on communities, livelihoods, and the environment. But the resolve to reduce people's vulnerability and to strengthen the nation's resilience to disasters grows stronger every passing tragedy. Mainstreaming disaster risk reduction in governance and practice is a fundamental strategy the Philippines adopted to pursue disaster and climate resilience and sustainable development. The Philippines, in solidarity with other countries, adopted the Yogo Framework for Action in 2005. Throughout the decade, the country implemented the framework's 5 priorities for action to reduce disaster risk at the national and local community levels and across all sectors. The country's top leaders and legislators enacted various laws mainstreaming disaster risk reduction into development initiatives. Republic Act 10121, otherwise known as the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010, puts in place national and local structures as well as systems for a proactive, consultative, and comprehensive approach to disaster risk reduction and management. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council was organized at the national level and composed of representatives from the national and local governments, as well as civil society and the private sector. This setup is also replicated at the local levels through the local DRRM councils and is also multi-stakeholder in nature. The council's primary role is creating policies and supervising the country's DRRM programs and mainstreaming these into local and national development plans. This is done in line with the National DRRM Framework and Plan, with the goal safer, adaptive, and disaster-resilient Philippine communities toward sustainable development. The framework highlights the 4 thematic areas of DRRM, namely prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response, rehabilitation, and recovery. Each thematic area is led by a vice chair from the national government agencies and is composed of the different council members. This is replicated at the local levels as well. The country upgraded the forecasting and assessment capabilities of science agencies. The Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration or PAGASA, and the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology or PHIVOLCS. The nationwide operationalized assessment of hazards or Project NOAA was introduced, and multi-hazard maps are now utilized to prevent or mitigate the potential impacts of hazards by reducing vulnerabilities and exposure of communities. Accurate and timely information about natural hazards are crucial in effectively reducing disaster risks and impact of hazards. These serve as a basis for pre-disaster interventions, such as preemptive evacuation of affected communities to safer areas, information dissemination, and pre-positioning of resources for response. In order to instill safety and resilience in Filipino culture, the public information and education campaigns on disaster preparedness were intensified. The national government conducted awareness drives, exercises, drills, trainings, policies, and protocol formulation, and planning workshops with local governments to strengthen capacities of communities to anticipate, cope, and recover from the negative impacts of disasters. The Education Department has integrated disaster risk reduction into the school's curricula, while others in the academe also institutionalize advanced education on disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. Understanding that there are underlying factors to disaster risk, the Philippines has enhanced its social and economic development programs for the most vulnerable sectors, including the poor, women, children, persons with disabilities, indigenous persons, and the elderly. Furthermore, in response to the emerging challenges after Typhoon Haiyan in 2013, the Philippines has engaged into a deeper study of the underlying social, economic, and environmental conditions that contribute to the detrimental impacts of natural hazards. The comprehensive rehabilitation and recovery plan for the communities and areas affected by the super typhoon ensures that the facilities are strengthened, capacities enhanced, and general social and economic conditions of the survivors are improved. These will make them more resilient through the principle of building back better. The country institutionalized the pre-disaster risk assessment and its actions, programs, and protocols to evaluate an impending hazard's level of risk given the degree of exposure and vulnerability in a specific area. It presents the possible impacts to the populace and serves as a basis to determine the appropriate preparedness and response actions from the national government agencies down to the local government units. The evidence-based information from the PDRA gathered before Typhoon Hagupit entered the country was used as the basis for the massive preparation and extensive evacuation of people, which resulted to minimal casualties. This event earned the Philippines praises from the international community. In the Philippine experience, the whole-of-society approach to DRRM is the key to making societies truly resilient. The Philippines is one with the whole world in celebrating the successes of the YOGO framework for action. The country remains steadfast in its commitment to continue working for safer, climate change adaptive, and disaster-resilient communities aimed towards building a stronger, more resilient Philippine nation.